Save big during Labor Day at Lowe's. Get up to 40% off select major appliances. Plus, buy more to get up to an additional 20% off. Shop even more savings with 3 Stay Green 1 cubic foot vegetable and flower garden soil bags for $10. This Labor Day, take care of your home for less at Lowe's. We help, you save. Valid through 9/3. Soil offer excludes Alaska and Hawaii. Selection varies by location. Select locations only. While supplies last. See Lowe's.com for more details.
So I wanted, before we get started, to let everyone know that I have a new podcast out, and it's called Meditations. If you like the Meditations segment of this current podcast, you'll like the Meditations podcast. It's nothing but 20 minutes of meditative sounds. And now, on with the podcast.
Americans love scenery. We want to see it all, from one coast to the next, Mount Rushmore down to the Everglades. So hop into a Chevy Malibu and take the scenic route. It's the car you knew America could build. There's a place where people count on friendships they can trace back generations, where they can count on the same stool at the coffee shop waiting for them every morning. This place is called Glen Ellen, and you can find it in every bottle of Glen Ellen wine. This is craft brewed Herman Joseph's, the smoothest, easiest drinking specialty beer in the entire solar system. And I believe you'll find drinkable in the dictionary right after don't order a beer you can't drink. Zoingo! Boingo! The freestyle pogo with more boing, more bounce. Bounce further, bounce higher with Zoingo Boingo. To see what makes Arrowhead Mountain Spring water different from those other waters, you have to go back to the source. And with Arrowhead, that means going back a little farther and longer than most. Between security challenged and security strengthened, there's one important word: how. And it is the how that makes all the difference to our nation and our world. Lockheed Martin. We never forget who we're working for. What makes Kraft Singles so good? 2 out of every 3 kids don't get the recommended amount of calcium. But with Kraft Singles, they get a good source of calcium and the taste they love. Kraft Singles. Magic every single time. Throw boring overboard with a new real meal from Long John Silver's. A meal worthy of a plate, just $4.99. Only at Long John Silver's. We may not all be geniuses, but we can all do something smart. Introducing the Hyundai 199 Sonata Lease. It's a smart deal on a really smart car.
I'm on the Delta one, the Frequent Survivor program. What happened to this? I mean,
I don't know.
Now,
they had another incident last night with some plane landing at the wrong airport. It wasn't Delta. It was, whatever it was, they were going into the wrong airport. And somebody said, "No, Harry, no."
Well, they had that near.
What are they doing? Following the railroad tracks or something? Is this it?
Well, a lot of this is deregulation because you have people flying. It was $80. You have people flying now who used to hitchhike or cling to the bottom of trains to get there. You get on the plane now and people with goats and chickens. Because, it used to be a sophisticated... I remember the old days when you would fly, halfway through the flight, the pilot would come out and he would walk down the aisle of the plane. Now it's like running the gauntlet. He walks out, people... Get in there. They stay locked in the worst are the commuter ones.
I have flown those like you if you play small towns.
Oh, boy, this is
without putting any of them down. You don't know that in Minnesota, I once had to fly out of Minnesota, and I called, and they said, you go on Gopher Airlines. Now, not that that Minnesota happens to be the Gopher state, and I had forgotten. And I said, I don't want to get on any plane named Gopher. I mean, but that's Gopher Airlines.
That's the thing, those are the kind of airlines that when they do crash, you only hear about it on cable. You know what I mean? They come in with a bulldozer, there's a mass grave, a little headstone. Nobody really, they thought so little of themselves, that kind of, no one really cares. You want to go down on American United. There's something that's going to make the papers. They would go for a little back thing behind the
Gopher Airlines, yeah.
It's terrible.
Oh, God. Are you a good flyer? Are you?
I don't mind it. I figure if the pilot's going to go down with me, as long as I know I'm taking him with me. If I'm dead, you're dead.
Not the way to look at it.
That's my attitude. See, the commuter one, it's not that they're so bad. It's just that they make, there's so many stops.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's not even regular stops, just the kind of stops, so like the pilot can show the plane to his friends. Every time we're like, you guys, I got it back,
Good morning. It's Monday, Moral Monday, September the 1st, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have motivation, meditation, and moral politics. All that and more when I get back. And I wanted to say, for those of you that maybe were missing Saturday's podcast, which was Rules Saturday, it's not available because I simply forgot to publish it. Back in a minute. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. And now this is called the Big Weekend Show from Fox News, and they are going to play clips here of Chicago, the Illinois mayor or governor, and then the Chicago mayor about their reactions to the prospect of having federal troops or National Guard or FBI or whoever patrolling the streets of Chicago here.
No one in the administration, the president or anybody under him, has called anyone in my administration and me, have not called the city of Chicago or anyone else. So it's clear that in secret they're planning this. Well, it's an invasion with U.S. troops.
He is reckless and out of control. He is the biggest threat to our democracy that we've experienced in the history of our country.
So there you go. Two officials. Notice what they didn't say. In these days, you got to listen not only for what people are saying, but for what they refuse to say. And what they didn't say is that what he's doing is wrong. They didn't say he is wrong. And they can't. Again, I'll say it. They cannot. Both these people are Democrats. They're liberal Democrats. And saying they're not allowed to say that people are right or wrong, okay, because that would acknowledge morals and moral standards, which they refuse to acknowledge. And moral standards means that you have knowledge of reality. Two other things that they absolutely refuse to acknowledge. So that means they've always got to speak in roundabout, indirect ways. Instead of being able to be direct about it and say, President Trump is wrong to send troops here or to send the FBI, and he's wrong because, and give your explanation, now you're communicating directly. You may be right, you may be wrong, but at least you're communicating directly. But instead, well, it's an invasion. Okay, so what? Sometimes invasions are necessary. Where the thing says that he's reckless and out of control. Is he wrong for wanting to send the FBI and or National Guard troops to Chicago? Okay, and he won't say it. So somebody in the news media should ask these two, is what he's doing wrong? Flat out. Come on. But they won't say it. They will bend over backwards to say everything but. Another couple of words, or at least one other word that you're going to hear when somebody doesn't want to say wrong, is they'll say it's unprecedented. This is unprecedented. And then they use that tone of voice to kind of sell it. Okay, because they can't say what he's doing is wrong. So instead, they use tone of voice and say, it's unprecedented. Or they'll say, it's unheard of. So, is it wrong? That's the issue. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now Howard Kurtz's Media Buzz.
They're challenging his motives and his results. This isn't the way to fix the problem of actual crime. This has everything to do with intimidation and Donald Trump's desire for martial law.
Donald Trump is attacking cities with large black and brown populations, with a lot of immigrants, and with black mayors. All three, D.C., Chicago, and Los Angeles. I do not think that is by accident.
What the president is saying is he wants to have law enforcement with long guns in these neighborhoods to put fear in the minds of those residents in communities that are largely led by black mayors.
So there you go. None of these individuals that were making commentaries there from various television stations are saying that Donald Trump is wrong. They're avoiding saying that he's wrong. They cannot use the R word or the W word because they don't believe in it. They don't believe in morals. They don't believe in knowledge. They don't believe in reality. So they have to find other words like attack. The other guy, Velshi, the one that started it, was talking about, he used buzzwords like trying to go to martial law. Okay. So he's trying to hint or suggest. He was the one that came the closest by saying this isn't going to work. Okay, he's close to saying that the president is wrong, but he doesn't actually say it. Okay, so none of them are saying that the president is wrong. They're avoiding it. They're using other words and being as indirect as they possibly can because they're psychologistic. And so what they're looking to do is to get in your psyche with the words that they use. How do you defeat it? You defeat it by calling them out on it. And the best way to do is just simply ask them, is he wrong? If you hear somebody say, well, Donald Trump is just attacking black mayors, number one, is he wrong for doing that? More than likely, they're just going to stare at you because they cannot answer that question. Number two, when they bring up the issue, anytime a lefty brings up the issue of race, black mayors, etc., or people of color, you want to consider asking them, how do you know? Black mayors in Los Angeles and Chicago and New York or wherever, how do you know they're black? And again, they'll just stare at you. They can't say, well, I know they're black because they look like they're black. That's not going to work. That smells racist. Because the first step on the road to racism is race consciousness. Okay, so, and they wrote the rules that say basically that everybody is whatever they want to be whenever they want to be it. So I can decide that I'm black right now. I can decide that I'm Hispanic. I can decide that I'm Asian. And then 10 minutes from now, I can change my mind. Because it's not a matter of fact. It's not a matter of reality. It's a matter of psychology. How do I feel at this particular point? Like that lady that was the head of the Seattle NAACP who was white. Her parents acknowledged that she was white, but she says, no, but I feel black. Okay, well, fine. You want to play Deuces Wild? We'll play Deuces Wild. And every time you bring up the race card, if you bring it up towards me, I'm going to say, what race do you think I am anyway? And if you say, well, how come Donald Trump is attacking black mayors? Whoa. How do you know they're black? See? So, again, if you deal with people that are avoiding the W word or the R word, best thing to do, call them out. Is what Donald Trump is doing right or wrong? Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Back in a minute. Thank you. A little bit more Howard Kurtz and Media Buzz.
That's right, for use of the airwaves. But then all the networks should, rather than singling out the ones you don't like. So is the real goal here to intimidate TV news operations?
I actually think...
Okay, so what we're talking about here is Donald Trump saying that he'd like to see ABS, NBS, and CBS lose their licenses and because of their unbelievable bias. Now, what Howard Kurtz asked here is you can feel free to say wrong question when he says, he's asking, is the president trying to intimidate the networks? And you can turn this around on him by simply saying that's the wrong question. The right question are the networks trying to intimidate not only Donald Trump, but his administration, his supporters, and the voters at large? And the answer to that is yes. So remember, just because somebody asks a question doesn't mean you have to answer it. Back in a minute. Thank you. And the show that keeps on giving, Media Buzz.
On to talk about how he wants to work with the administration on the Key Bridge. And for the record, that money was appropriated at the end of the Biden administration. Robbie, is it fair? And you've made the distinction. Not all the cases are the same. For example, John Bolton. But is it fair to describe this overall as a campaign of retribution?
There you go. So again, fair is another one of the words that the left likes to use when they, in place of wrong or right. Okay, so they'll ask if it's fair. And you should feel free to say, well, that's the wrong question. The right question is it right that this is a campaign of retribution? And the answer is no, it's wrong. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little Victor Davis Hanson and then a comment.
Recently, there's been more revision about World War II. Tucker Carlson had on his show the other day a chemistry professor from Cornell University, David Cullum, that was sort of resonating what a prior blogger, Darrell Cooper, had said about World War II. In the vein of Diana West, Pat Buchanan, all the way back to Herbert Hoover, the gist of it was we should have never allied with the Soviet Union, and we should have either let Hitler and Stalin fight it out, or in the case of David Cullum, he suggested that we might have wanted to fight with Hitler, or in other words, he said we were on the wrong side. So the idea that we would ally ourselves with Hitler, and if we did, it would have stopped the Holocaust, is absurd. Before the organized death camps at Auschwitz or Bergenthal or Treblinka, before it was the formal Holocaust, Hitler was killing Jews. The other thing he said very interesting was George Patton wanted to fight with Hitler against Stalin. He did not. He said the Soviets had killed 15 to 20,000 American POWs. That's not true. Recently, there's
when you're listening to this, because again he's talk about these people that are making claims. He says revisionist, but the word he doesn't use is wrong. And this is an otherwise normal guy. Victor Davis Hanson isn't somebody I would normally classify as a left-winger, a liberal, or a socialist, but he talks like one. He talks like a socialist. That's what you are. So anyways, he talks like one because he won't use the W word. He won't come out and say, there are people out there that are spreading false things. That's a good one too, is the F word, false. False ideas about World War II. They were wrong when they said blah, 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 blah. Okay. Instead, what he uses is one of the classic left-wing words, weasel words, which is absurd. Oh, well, that's absurd. What does that mean? Does that mean that they're right or that they're wrong? And then at the end, he uses another word again that has nothing to do with right or wrong. Either these folks are right to say that we should have fought with Hitler against Stalin, or they were wrong. And as a matter of fact, they're wrong because there was a fight in World War II is basically three, 1, 2, 3 against each other. So you had fascism / Nazism with Mussolini and Hitler versus communism or Stalinism, which was the Soviet Union. But the third one was freedom and or capitalism, represented by Roosevelt. Okay, it's important not to forget that. The revisionist historians want you to believe that there's only two ways that you can go, that you can either support communism, and if you refuse to support communism, you're anti-communist, then you're pro-fascist or pro-Nazi. So, if somebody says that Nazi, you say capitalist. If they say Hitler, you say Roosevelt. Just that simple. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Jeffrey Mead.
In LA, do you think ICE is not going to show up around voting and polling booths to chill participation? You know that. The National Guard, you know that. Everybody knows what's at stake, so we have to put a stake in the ground and do things differently.
If you're a U.S. citizen and you're legally allowed to vote, what does it matter if ICE is near a voting place? Is Gavin Newsom saying the quiet part out loud? The only people who should be afraid of ICE in this country are people who are in this country illegally.
Okay, so what he's missing so far is, first of all, I want to call out Gavin Newsom and say, what a Nazi. And he's a Nazi because he looks like a Nazi because he has a Nazi haircut. You don't believe me? Look at any picture of Martin Bormann, okay? And they have exactly the same hairstyles, okay? Now, second thing is that what Gavin Newsom is doing here is playing the possibility game. He is suggesting that something might happen or that it is possible to happen. And it's easy to shut it down. So if Gavin Newsom is telling me, well, you know it's going to happen, I would say, no, I don't, because I know that what you're suggesting is impossible. It will not happen in the state of California. It will not happen in the United States of America. It is impossible. And that shuts that down right away. So that's what the only thing that Jeffrey Mead should have picked up on here. But other than that, _Jeffrey Mead on Instagram. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now a little bit of Mark Kaye.
How does this even happen? A young autistic boy was caught on camera strolling along the monorail tracks in Hershey, Pennsylvania, at the Hershey, Pennsylvania fun park place. And he's walking and people are yelling at him, and he's autistic, and I don't think you're supposed to yell at I don't think they like it when you yell at him. And so you can see he's covering his ears. He's all freaked. He doesn't know which way to go. I don't even know if the monorail is still operational. I don't know if people were they able to get in touch with the monorail operator and say to hold everything? But eventually what happened is, thank God, some guy, I don't know if it's his parent or whatever, was able to climb up onto the monorail tracks. There he is. Look, he's jumping up on the tracks, and the boy starts walking toward me. He's like, come here, kid. And he scoops him up, and they take him to safety. But I mean, holy cow, that has got to be one of the wildest rides anyone's ever taken in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Okay, so of this whole rant, he has a caption because this is on Instagram. Mark Kaye and his Instagram account, and he has a caption that says, "Where were the parents?" Bingo. If you listen to news reports of this situation, it makes it sound as though this was something that just happened, that this kid just happened to be up on the monorail, and people just happened to be yelling at him, and somebody just happened to go up and pick him up off the monorail thing and bring him to safety. And also, according to news reports, the monorail was shut down that day, and that was so he wasn't in danger of getting hit by the monorail, but still, it shouldn't have been up there. He could have easily fallen off. Anyhow, but the most interesting part is, where were the parents? This wasn't something that just happened. This was something that was made to happen, and made to happen by the parents due to their negligence. Remember that. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, moral politics.
Chapter 15. Abortion. Let us begin with some lexicography. The words embryo, fetus, and baby. Embryo and fetus are medical terms. An embryo is a product of conception, more organized than just a cluster of cells, but not yet recognizable as a member of the species. A fetus is a further stage of the organism, but one not yet born. There is no precise, objectively specifiable moment at which a cluster of cells becomes an embryo, and the embryo a fetus. But there are certain relatively clear cases. Take the cases of an IUD and a morning after pill. Both of those prevent a fertilized egg that has become a cluster of cells from becoming attached to the mother's uterus. The cells are then expelled, and the result looks like spotting from the woman's period. The cluster of cells is not yet an embryo. The embryo turns into a fetus, a recognizable form of the human species, at some time between 8 and 12 weeks. The fetus at this point cannot exist outside the woman's body until, at the very least, several weeks later. An embryo then is not recognizable as a form of the species and cannot have an existence separate from the mother's body. Once the fetus is born, it is called a baby. The terms embryo and fetus call up a medical context, in which the issues are medical issues. An abortion from the medical perspective is a surgical procedure. If an embryo is aborted in the 7th week, a living, organized group of cells that is not a recognizable form of the species has been removed from the uterus, and it ceases to exist as a living entity outside the uterus. Using words like embryo and fetus keeps things in the domain of medical procedures, where the issues are medical. Using the term baby imposes a different form of conceptualization. A baby is an independently existing human being, not just an unrecognizable group of the mother's cells that might be subject to a medical procedure. Defenders of the morality of abortion are usually defenders of early abortion of the embryo or of a fetus well before it is viable outside the womb, usually in the first trimester. That is, they are defenders of the morality of removing from a mother a group of cells that is not an independent, viable, and recognizable human being. Opponents of abortion use the word baby to refer to the cluster of cells, the embryo, and the fetus alike. The very choice of the word baby imposes the idea of an independently existing human being, whereas cluster of cells, embryo, and fetus keep discussion in the medical domain. Baby moves the discussion to the moral domain. The issue of the morality of abortion is settled once the words are chosen. The purposeful removal of a cell group from the mother that does not constitute an independently existing, viable, or even a recognizable human being cannot be murder. The word murder is not defined as such a medical procedure. The purposeful killing of a baby, an independently existing human being, can be murder. Is an abortion in the first trimester, say, in the 7th week, merely a surgical procedure that is morally neutral, and perhaps even moral if it is beneficial to the mother? Or is it the murder of a baby? The answer one gives depends on how one frames the situation and, correspondingly, on what word he or she uses, embryo or baby. When there is more than one possible framing of the situation, is there a right framing? Is there a single right way to conceptualize abortion? Both sides agree that there is a right framing, but they disagree as to which the right framing is. But both sides agree the answer is a moral one, and that it is a moral stance that chooses the right framing. These views are held with very deep moral conviction and sincerity on both sides. In many cases, they are so deeply held that they are part of one's identity. Interestingly, the choice of framing is not independent of politics and political morality. Catholics aside, religion is another very relevant matter. Liberals think of abortions and talk about them in terms of medical procedures, while conservatives think and talk about them in terms of killing babies. It could be that this is a historical accident, but I don't think so. I think it has everything to do with the two moral systems, those of the strict father and the nurturant parent. What inclines me to this view is the attitude of pro-life advocates on the death penalty and on programs for reducing America's astronomically high rate of infant mortality, the highest in the industrialized world. Most pro-life advocates favor the death penalty. Most pro-life advocates do not support government programs for reducing infant mortality through, say, prenatal and postnatal care programs for impoverished mothers. Indeed, some cynical liberals have even questioned the sincerity of pro-life advocates as not really being in favor of life as an absolute, since they support the death penalty. Other liberals have questioned the morality of pro-life advocates who want to save the lives of some unborn babies, those who would be aborted, and not save the lives of other unborn babies, the great many who die of inadequate pre- and postnatal care. To a liberal, it is both illogical and immoral for someone to want to save the life of an unborn baby whose mother does not want it, but not to want to save the life of a baby whose mother does want it. I do not question the sincerity of pro-life advocates on the issue of abortion. I have met many of them, and their moral position seems completely sincere. But when I mention the death penalty, that is seen to be irrelevant and another matter completely. And when I mention pre- and postnatal care, they say they hadn't thought of it, but maybe it might be a good idea, though maybe not if the government does it. But they do not, with the fervor with which they oppose abortion, then go out and support pre- and postnatal care programs. I do not think such opinions are either irrational or insincere. I think they are natural concomitants of having a conservative worldview, a strict father morality. Think back for a moment to the beginning of Chapter 9, where I laid out the major categories of moral actions for conservatives. So far as I can tell, those are the primary categories in terms of which conservatives naturally categorize actions as moral or not. Those categories do not mention life and death as primary criteria in themselves. Issues of life and death are seen as moral or not based on other criteria. The death penalty falls under Category 3, upholding the morality of reward and punishment. On the basis of those categories, conservatives support the death penalty and oppose social programs, for the reasons I gave above. Programs for pre- and postnatal care are social programs, and so they are opposed by conservatives. Moreover, conservatives would naturally assume that such care was the responsibility of parents. If poor parents could not afford adequate pre- and postnatal care, then it would be irresponsible for them to have children. For conservatives, the issue of infant mortality due to inadequate care is one of individual responsibility, not government action. It comes under moral category 2, self-discipline and self-reliance. The death penalty and pre- and postnatal care simply fall, for these reasons, under different primary categories of moral action in the conservative moral system. But what about abortion? Why should conservatives tend to categorize as a baby what liberals see as an embryo? Consider for a moment who is most likely to want an abortion. There are two classical kinds of cases: unmarried teenage girls who have been having sex but have been careless or ignorant in the matter of birth control. Women who want careers or independent lives and whose deepest aspirations would be destroyed by having a child at this point in their lives. There are, of course, many other kinds of cases, victims of rape or incest, for example, and women with a family already and neither the money nor the strength to raise more children. But the first two are the stereotypes. Let us start with the first case. According to strict father morality, an unmarried teenage girl should not be having sex at all. It is a moral weakness, a lack of self-discipline, a form of immoral behavior, and she deserves punishment. She has to be responsible for the consequences of her actions if she is to learn from her mistakes. An abortion would simply sanction her immoral behavior. She would be getting away with it. That is unconscionable, immoral, a violation of moral action category 2, self-discipline and responsibility for one's actions. Here is how Marvin Olasky, a major conservative writer, puts it. Wall Street Journal, March 22, 1995. Unmarried lust and abortion go together like a horse and carriage. Men and women who shack up are 9 times more likely to engender abortion than their married counterparts. Anything that increases promiscuity and discourages marriage increases abortion. Now the second case. In the strict father model of the family, a woman's role is raising children. The moral order places men in leadership roles, not women. Women can work to help out the family and to help out men in business. But women should not be choosing careers or an independent careerist lifestyle over their natural role as mothers in a family. When a woman chooses an abortion in order to place a career above motherhood, she is violating the moral order and challenging the entire strict father model. Abortion in such a case is immoral by moral action category 1, self-defense of the strict father family model, where the father has authority, and category 5, upholding the moral order, with men ranked above women. In both of the classical stereotypical cases, abortion violates strict father morality. Strict father morality therefore incorporates very strong reasons for categorizing abortion as immoral. But categorizing abortion as immoral fits the baby frame, not the morally neutral medical frame. Thus, classical strict father morality correlates naturally with conceptualizing the object of abortion as a baby. Once that is done, it becomes difficult, if not impossible, to classify abortion as anything but baby killing. Once strict father morality chooses opposition to abortion, and with it, the use of the baby frame, that choice functions to reinforce the strict father model itself. A primary function of the strict father model is the protection of innocent children. Opposition to abortion provides an ideal opportunity to assert a protective function and justify strict father morality. What could be a more perfect model of a helpless, innocent child than a baby in the womb? What could be a more heinous crime than bloody murder? This reinforces strict father morality once you have it. Once one classifies the object of an abortion as a baby, the abortion becomes baby killing, and it is natural for it to evoke deep and sincere moral outrage. Thus, as a conservative, it is completely natural to be morally outraged by abortion, to favor the death penalty, and to be opposed to government programs for pre- and postnatal care, all for different reasons. One last thing. In this explanation, the crucial thing that forces an opposition to abortion, and with it the use of the baby frame, is the authority of men above women in strict father morality. In conservative feminism, as described below in Chapter 17, the authority of men over women is eliminated, and the crucial condition for requiring opposition to abortion is not met. Thus, conservative feminists, both male and female, are not bound by the logic of their morality to be either pro-life or pro-choice. In short, the model predicts that there should be conservatives who are pro-choice, and that they should be those who do not rank men above women in the moral order. At this point, we must ask similar questions about liberals. Why do liberals support a woman's right to choose whether to have an abortion? Why is the liberals' object of nurturance the pregnant woman instead of the embryo or fetus or the cluster of cells? Why don't liberals use the baby classification instead of the fetus one? We saw that the conservative categories of moral action require conservative opposition to abortion in the two cases cited above. But the liberal categories of moral action work very differently. In nurturant parent morality, the teenage girl is in trouble. She needs help and deserves empathy. Moral action category 2, helping. The last thing she needs is somebody bawling her out, telling her how bad she is and that she needs to be punished. Just being in this position is about as much punishment as a person should reasonably have to take. She isn't ready to be a mother. She has her whole life ahead of her, and quite reasonably shouldn't have her aspirations ruined. Moral action category 4, self-development. She has plenty of time to have children and be a mother later when she can raise them properly. She should have the abortion if that's what she wants. There is nothing immoral about it. Since there is nothing in the categories of liberal moral action that militates against the abortion, and much that favors it, the categorization of the collection of cells as an embryo or fetus rather than as a baby is motivated. And with it, the medical framing of the surgery. The story is pretty much the same for the career woman. Liberals and conservatives, understandably, find each other's attitudes shocking. Conservatives, who cannot help but use the baby frame, find it hard to imagine anyone not using it and not thinking of abortion as baby killing. To a conservative, a woman making the choice to have an abortion is necessarily engaging in denial, finding an excuse for her own self-indulgence and for her immoral behavior and irresponsibility. Conservatives, given their moral system, cannot help but see it that way. Liberals find the attitudes and actions of conservatives equally horrific. Conservatives are trying to ruin the lives of young girls in trouble and women trying to make a go of it in a man's world. They are hounding brave doctors and nurses who are working with diligence and courage to help those women. Their actions and their rhetoric encourage those who would threaten or even kill people who have dedicated their lives to helping women who desperately need them. They are encouraging a return to the days of dangerous back-alley abortionists. Given their moral system, liberals, too, cannot help but see it that way.
And that was Chapter 15 about abortion, moral politics, how liberals and conservatives think by Dr. George Lakoff. And all of this stuff, again, is just the left making things up. First of all, they always approach the issues in terms of dichotomies. You're either for or you're against. Abortion. Are you for or against abortion? Are you for or against women's rights? Are you for or against gay rights? Are you for or against trans rights? Always a dichotomy. But that doesn't mean that everything is a cut and dry, black and white issue. Look at abortion. One of the things we get stuck in this fighting the abortion situation, meaning that we have to shut down all the abortion clinics and we have to send people out to protest and block the doors and all that stuff. And yet, what we could do instead is simply say for those, because the left now wants to say that we have to have abortion because of at-risk pregnancies, women that have been raped, they've been subject to incest, or they are having some kind of a medical condition that would make an abortion a reasonable option. So I would say that the people in power should say, this is the way we're going to handle abortion from now on. If you have an at-risk pregnancy, as I've just described, then if you decide, instead of having the abortion, to carry the child to term and give birth, then the government will give you double or triple the earned income tax credit. Now, we could do it for the 18 years that the child is around, or we could also just set it up as a limit. So say for a year, 3 years, 5 years, something of that nature. But the point is, if we do that, now we're giving women the incentive to carry to term. And it's much less like we're trying to force them to carry to term. Okay? Hey, carry to term, get double or triple the earned income tax credit. And if all the women that would normally have an abortion decide to carry to term instead, then we put places like Planned Parenthood out of business without even having to try. So, but anyways, the essence of his argument in chapter 4 at 15 is everything is equal, that the left has a moral argument to make, the right has a moral argument to make. If you believe that, then we can't win. We can't win if you believe that the left is making a moral argument when it supports abortion. Think about it. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that moral relativism is immoral.
Hi, I'm Kristen Bell, and if you know my husband Dax, then you also know he loves shopping for a car. Selling a car? Not so much.
We're really doing this, huh?
Thankfully, Carvana makes it easy. Answer a few questions, put in your VIN or license, and done. We sold ours in minutes this morning, and they'll come pick it up and pay us this afternoon.
Bye-bye, truckie.
Of course, we kept the favorite.
Hello, other truckie.
Sell your car with Carvana today. Terms and conditions apply.